And there we are. We are now live. Right?
Oh, awesome.
So we'll hopefully
cool.
I'll get that link here shortly, I hope, and I'll be able to pop it up there for everybody else. And then I'll introduce you guys because you're all awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And get that going. Hopefully it don't pop up with this old one that I started set up here. Let's see. Resume Hangout on air. Here we go. We'll click that. I hope that doesn't screw up anything there. Yeah, everything's still good. Okay, live control room. Let's see here. There we go. It's finally starting to go. Still don't see. Only see the info on that. So.
Oh, it's Master Chudy. He's in the chat.
Oh, good. Hello, Master Chudy. How are you?
Hey guys.
I said I still can't see it yet, so I'll introduce everybody once we get a couple people in here. But as I said, just let me know because I'm still waiting to see it.
Anytime, Frugal.
Oh, okay.
We got Night Wolf.
Okay, so we got some people. Okay, well, everyone, thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue number 6 and Spider-Man in general. And I have a great group of guests here with me to make me look good. I have the amazing Douglas Ernst. Hold on. Did I miss something?
No, I said hola.
Oh, hola. I'm sorry. I heard wrong. We have the Spectacular Spike Valentine, and we have the Superior. Yeah, and we have the Superior Nerd Wonder.
Hello.
And we have the friendly neighborhood Captain Frugal, I guess is what I've been deemed. So that works out well.
I think so because everybody loves you in the community, man.
Aw, they're too kind.
No.
I still can't see anything. So you guys, so excellent. So the cannot speak all of a sudden. Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 6. First of all, did you guys like the comic book?
Oh, full disclosure, I didn't read it. The thing I'm here is because I think I was the one who came up with the idea. Like, I would like to hear you talk about the issue because you were so passionate about it. And it's like a sales pitch, because we're in some turning time, we're starting to enter to this new era, and I think people need to know why they should go back to Marvel. In my case, I haven't bought Marvel superhero books from like X-Men 92 or something like 2 years ago.
Oh wow, so it's been a while. So, yeah, that's great. And one of the reasons, Spike, I wanted to have you on too is, first of all, you have a massive wealth of knowledge about the comic book industry and being a script writer too, and things. You give us that honest, good perspective as well. And your channel is highly unsubbed. It's unfair.
I think it's okay, man. Like, I just like to talk about comics, and what I enjoy the most on my channel is the comments. And I usually talk to you over there and Crumple Point. And everyone, like, I'm just here to talk about comics. That's it.
I really like your knowledge in the whole entire industry and stuff. You're just like amazing to just learn so much about.
You guys making me blush, but hey, it's Spider-Man.
That's right. But we're true. We're being honest there, Spike. You're awesome, and you need to get you.
Thank you.
We need to get you on more of these things.
Yeah.
All right. So this issue was written by Chip Zdarsky. And the art was by Walsh. I don't know his first name. What was it? Herring? Yeah, Herring. I think it was Walsh, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, one of the things I took away from this is I really think it's the first time in a long time that we've seen Peter Parker and J. Jonah Jameson really written well in character. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's usually like, like Jameson is usually like to be their embodiment of Hitler at times, but finally we're seeing him as he usually is, just kind of like he still has a heart and stuff.
Yeah, he's more than just a loudmouth.
Yeah, they've always stated, though he's like a dick, he's always a dick to Spider-Man, he's really nice, and they pointed out in places I go, and they're like, they'll defend Jameson. They're like, don't make Jameson Hitler because he's done all this great stuff. Like, he is civil rights, he was all for it. Mutant rights, he's all for it. He just really hates Spider-Man.
How about you, Doug? What's your thoughts on J. Jonah Jameson?
No, I thought this issue, it really kind of shocked me because the first few issues of Spectacular, like I dropped it from my pull list after the first few issues where Peter Parker was like in coffee shops with his mask on and like a suit jacket and doing stand-up comedy in his Spider-Man outfit and failing, and it was just like ridiculous and cheesy, and I was just like, this guy's treating this all as a joke. And then like out of nowhere I picked up this issue, and then I'm like, wait, Chip Zdarsky could actually like write a serious comic and actually do a good job.
I felt the same way. I gave that same issue you were just talking about a scathing review, and I mean, I picked it apart.
They're chopping a little, man.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're getting a little choppy, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully the network will be all right. I gave this the previous issue of the Spectacular Spider-Man a scathing review. I absolutely hated it. I thought it was garbage. Matter of fact, it was the same one you did, and I was comparing it to an older issue. And then I read this one, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is night and day. I couldn't believe it was the same writer.
Like I was like totally done with it when I heard about the previous issues. I saw clips of it, and I was like, this is a joke. This is not what I wanted to read. Well, then again, I'm just like, this is why I go cold turkey on Spider-Man itself, because nobody cares.
My impression from what I saw you guys talk about the issues, it was like this new minimum common denominator formula Marvel has for like the movies and stuff, that it's joke, 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 and you can insert basically any character.
Yeah, it's all.
And then,
sorry.
And then when I saw this rave review about this issue of Spectacular Spider-Man, I was like, really? I mean, this is actually like something I could get into. Like, this is like one of the best things I've heard out of Marvel for a couple of years.
How about you, Doug? You've been reading a lot of Spider-Man, right? So how is this compared to what you've been reading over the last few years?
Well, the thing with this issue is like I was telling you before we we went live, that I was like, well, is this going to carry over into the Amazing Spider-Man? Because like if it is, like that's kind of like a slap in the face to Dan Slott and like the confidence that Marvel has in him that they would let Zdarsky do something this huge. But and the other reason why I thought that was that it was really well done. Like I was like, wow, if they could pull this off, like that's actually, you could have a lot of character growth for both of them. You know, for decades they even say in the book they've been at like loggerheads against each other, and maybe this will break that. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of like possibilities with this. And Zdarsky actually, like, you know, within a couple issues cemented himself in like Marvel lore, if they actually went with it, but I guess they're not. So I don't know.
I don't think they are going to, because let's face it, they do this before. They've done this before. They'll do it again, and they'll just. Spider-Man is one of the series they always reset. It takes it 5 minutes, and then they'll just reset it. Like we saw this before, like I think in the 90s. Then we saw it in Civil War, and Civil War was supposed to shake up so much, and then no, just a reset button. And Dan Slott's all about reset buttons. How many times has he reset like Spider-Man back to square one in his series?
Well, I think the thing about how Dan writes Spider-Man, having worked with him and all, is that there's a little saying that goes around in the artist challenge and stuff, that you have to stop being a fan, and I think that's mostly not true. But what I would say about how he took Spider-Man, and I was there writing in Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of 90s toys, when you watch the Batman Returns, and you have this Batman with a missile launcher that launches ice cubes and whatever, that doesn't make any sense. That's, I think, the type of thing we see mostly from Dan Slott. We have like this Spider-Man with this armor that has this he has like an infrastructure like Tony Stark, and it doesn't make sense unless you just want to be Spidey to be this super powered hero from the early 80s Hasbro era.
Yeah, but that's the thing as well, that I recall that like they make jokes about that, because in the original old school Spider-Man, they would make it a point that it's like, this is not what Spider-Man is, where he's not a gimmick, he's not a toy, collect them all. Like, yeah, we'll sell stuff, but it's got to be like part of his lore. And yet now we have him like in a car and like having a helicopter and stuff. It's like he's not Batman, and it just kind of ruins what he was.
Yeah. Another interesting thing too about this, I want to talk about it a little bit as well as the art. We had a different artist, and I really liked the artwork and the style for this comic. And one of the first things I noticed right on the first page is J. Jonah Jameson. You see on the desk, he's got a coffee mug, and they added detail in that coffee mug. It's got a spider symbol with a no sign through it.
Yeah.
So little things like that, but it wasn't the most technical art style. I have a hard time explaining it, but I think it really fit the tone of the book. It worked.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. That you don't have to be like a Vinci to make a comic book good. You have to adapt. I mean, you have to find middle ground between the story and the art. Because if you have like a very funny, jokey comic book with Jim Lee style of art, it doesn't really work.
Right. Yeah, so this issue was so good. By the way, the next issue is pretty good too. I pretty much wrote off this series. I mean, I was pretty brutal in my video. I'll admit that. I had no hopes that this series would be any good. But I tell you, I would recommend at least issue 6 and then the next one with the renumbering to everybody from this series. It's really good. Just the wording and things that were said. They start by sitting there and talking at a coffee table, and they're talking about a deal that J. Jonah Jameson is not going to write anything negative about him. If he gives Spider-Man the information he needs. And so they go there and they're having a little back and forth. And there's even the humor in this book I think hits pretty well. For one point, for example, J. Jonah James says, but my job is to verify that the info is real. We started working on how this could have happened in the first place. The source told us the majority of the information was on a technical nature. So where did S.H.I.E.L.D. get that? What was the easiest, most logical place? And Peter answers, I don't know, some sort of official handbook. And for anybody who knows the Marvel official handbooks, that's a pretty funny inside joke.
From what I gathered...
No, go ahead, Spike. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You have a better point than I probably.
Oh, no, I'm sure yours will be better, but I'll go first. Okay, for one of the issues I've had with Spider-Man books, especially in the slot one, and you hit on it a little bit too already, is it's like everyone was fighting for the humor, fighting for the joke in the books. And this one, even the first few with Chip Zdarsky, the jokes really fell flat and were not good. Whereas this one, they're well timed and just well placed, and it just has the right amount to it. So it's not roll off your seat funny, but it's just like that's a good one to keep you wanting to read.
I was thinking what you're talking about and what J. Jonah Jameson meant to the Spider-Man mythos and how he's a character, but also an antagonist. And the thing about Spidey's humor people have forgotten is because he's trying to make it light for himself when he is in a dire situation. Not every single day, every single hour. Just when he's actually being Spider-Man, when he's Peter Parker, he's basically like a normal guy whose main antagonist really is his boss, who kind of hates him in the employer. We don't get along. Yeah. We are from different generations and stuff, and also being Spider-Man and he not knowing that, although in later comics and stuff he does know, and it gets muddy. But from what you're telling me, I hadn't seen this interaction since, and this kind of meaningful aspect of the Peter Parker melodrama since maybe Amazing Spider-Man 600 or something.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was wondering, I don't know exactly how it works with turning in scripts and working on them and revising them. You almost can't help but wonder if he watched the YouTube reviews after the first 2 issues. And then was yeah, maybe I should tone down the jokes or something like that. That is a good point, because it's so different than the first couple issues that you're just he had to have listened to some of the criticisms or something. I don't know.
I think that's one big possibility. God knows I would do that. But I also think thinking about Zdarsky didn't strike to me as a person who read superhero comics. I think he stated at some point he didn't even like Spider-Man. I'm not 100% on that, but that's what I heard. Anyway, I think he discovered that Spider-Man is much more than what he had in his mind. Maybe he listened to the criticism, or maybe he discovered Spidey. I think it could be one of those.
Maybe both.
Yeah.
Because I know I've known people that have actually spoken to him after he stated a few things, and they would talk to him on Twitter about like one of his statements, and they're like, "You really gonna do that? Because that would just really upset us." And he actually would sit down and explain stuff, and he's like, "No, I don't mean it like this. But what are you worried about?" And so when I heard about that, I'm like, he kind of talks to his fans or people that are interested.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And you know who has been doing that as well? It's Sean Murphy, and he's doing Batman White Knight, which is actually a very good book that does a big balance between, he talks about SJWs, and he has to show like, one side of Batman we've never seen and one side of the Joker we've never seen, and it's a tough balance. If Chip Zdarsky is doing that, like, big props to the guy.
Never mind.
Okay. Well, the book starts getting in and getting even deeper after a couple pages in, where they're starting that chat, in the interview, and Peter, shares. He goes, "When I was young, someone close to me died. It was senseless, random act of violence, and I could have stopped it, and I didn't. So yeah, I do this because I can't let this happen again." He's sharing why he is Spider-Man, why he does this. And when he starts doing that, they start showing J. Jonah Jameson and him reflecting on his wife and how he was helpless to do anything and change that. So they really start digging in and showing in a way a little bit how they have some similarities and some common ground now, even though they're enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
It's been the thing that we kind of touched on before that's been missing in Spider-Man for so long, is these kind of genuine human interactions where, like, I feel like, for however many years, Dan Slott thinks that, like, Spider-Man, the mask, makes the hero instead of, the man underneath the mask making the hero or something like that. And an issue like this is where it's like you had Spider-Man, but he was like revealing his inner self to Jonah. And like that's why people care about the character. It's not because necessarily like people like spider powers and swinging around cities, but they really connect with the human element, the person underneath the mask.
Yeah, that's I think why Spider-Man 2 is regarded as the best Spidey film of them all, because you can actually, it's more of a melodrama about Peter Parker than the guy with the mask.
No, it's true. And they used to say that when they compare Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield stuff, they would always say they would always explain them as like they're two different entities of Spider-Man, because they stated this, that Andrew Garfield played the best Spider-Man but the worst Peter Parker, but Tobey Maguire may have played a sucky Spider-Man, but he played an immensely powerful Peter Parker.
Yeah, and it goes to show that change is possible in the comic book industry. I mean, what we're talking about, the core of the characters, not just a mask, is something that has been missing at Marvel for years now. Like, when, for example, everyone is Captain America, it means Captain America is just a bodysuit. It's not the kid from Brooklyn who, stood up for what he believed. And that's like the Captain America I like is because I like Steve Rogers as a moral compass for me. I just don't like, the Shield or whatever.
I agree with you 100% there as well. Marvel's lost its way on that. They act like it's just an interchangeable name with a mask, and they don't realize is what we really cared about was the core of the characters. And this book really hits that core again. Go ahead, Nerd Wonder. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine. I'm just they've been doing this for how many years? This like whole entire thing of everybody can be this hero and stuff like that. What has it been? 5 years?
The way I see it, it was accentuated with Secret Wars, and I think Secret Wars was made because of two reasons. One, because they were getting all these new editors and new writers and stuff who didn't really handle canon, so they were gonna get rid of the canon, and because of the Fantastic Four legal issues, they can't actually legally use read and sue, so they had to send them away in a big kind of way.
Okay. Now, also, it changes the history a little bit of Spider-Man this issue, too, where it says J. Jonah Jameson actually was there when Spider-Man was a performer right from the start, which I don't know if that really that much of a change. He might have meant he said he was in the audience, so they never said he wasn't. So we got to see him at the very start as performer, and he said he wished he stayed that way. And then it just keeps getting deeper and deeper in the book, where that's when they start talking about vigilantism. As Spider-Man became a vigilante. And here's something I found very neat. He mentions the mask, and he says the mask of a coward. Now that part I absolutely love there, because it appears like that's not fair. I wear this mask to protect my loved ones. If my identity ever got out, and then J. Jonah Jameson comes back at him hogwash. Cops don't wear masks; they deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that? Because we deal with the same thing, by the way, with online anonymity, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm going to state this: they've done this before, and this was in Civil War. That's what That's what everybody's statement was when they were doing the Registration Act. Is like, well, the cops do this and everything else, and when Peter took off his mask, it ruined his life.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that with the Civil War, so we've got an idea of what would happen. But I think that's a great point. They're arguing the back and forth of that, and we see the same thing right now. And I drew this conclusion to Dan Slott. Anybody with anonymity on the internet, they're a coward and this, but you don't realize, some people don't realize we fear doxing and things like that. Because Doug, you know this, Hannah, you've been experiencing it. They've been going after you in your job.
Yeah, that's been an interesting development for sure. So
how's your boss dealing with that?
My boss generally just laughs it off. I do, as long as I continue to do my job the way I've been doing it, then they're not going to really care. And they're used to people like that who go after writers and reporters and op-ed writers and stuff like that. So, it's just with my job, it's one thing, but it would be different if it was like someone like Frugal. It's like not everybody works for, in a newspaper with like an op-ed section and they cover politics and stuff like that. So, but anyway, that's that.
Yeah, and I thought it was hilarious too, because I thought of myself too. It's like, wow, I remember he shot at me that I was the guy in the mask talking crap or whatever.
It sounds like he's Jonah Jameson, you're Spider-Man.
The thing I wonder is why not just address or talk to you if you have like this problem. I mean, and I know, like I've had lunch with Dan Slott. I know he can handle a civil conversation. Like I don't know what happens with this like internet thing, in the sense of, yeah, I'm probably an edgelord if you want to call me something on the internet, but if usually someone talks to me, I talk to them, and even in real life, like I used to be a radio host, an FM radio host. Mm-hmm. Actually, most people in Mexico know me because of that. I've been to 7-Eleven and people recognize my voice.
Oh, that's cool.
I just like talk to them. Like I don't see why, if you're having disagreements and your work depends on the fans and on the journalists around you, why don't you try to talk to us? Right. That's why is so hard. I don't know if these guys have in their mind like we're like KKK masks in our houses or something, but
I think it's a lot to do with
you cut off, Nerd Wonder.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt, and I'm trying to get better at this. The thing is, and this is going to be a nice defense for him, and I don't like him, but I think it's just a lot to deal with. Yeah, he probably got a lot of hate mail. He probably got a lot of screaming at him, and he just couldn't take it. But I have known people in industries like this, like that have worked in music industries, gaming industries, and this is something you will always get.
Yeah, I understand that. I can see that. But in the case, for example, of Captain Frugal and Doug, he's actually going out of his way to spy on them and not address them. I think there's a difference between, addressing that. And I know he does this a lot. He addresses random guys on Twitter, but the guys he has been stalking for years, he cannot, put a direct word in between them.
Right.
Okay.
And that's one thing that's really interesting about this comic book, is even though they've had all this animosity and all this issues, they're actually talking it out. And that was phenomenal. And Mariana in the comments mentioned the issue showed that both sides had parallels, Spidey and Jameson. And the fact that it showed both sides and didn't slant it to one side that was refreshing to see in Marvel.
Well, actually, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about it is that Peter disclosed his secret identity after, you know, psychologically, like essentially killing Jameson. He went for like the jugular with some of his barbs about his personal life and how, you know, the cowardice and all that sort of stuff. And it's like he always pulls his punches against the bad guys, right? Like he has the physical power to kill somebody because he's so strong. But then when he was dealing man to man with a person, he like let out with this, you know, it's different when you're using words against someone. You could almost hurt somebody worse. And then Jonah breaks down and he's crying and he was saying that, you know, he's lost everybody and all he has is hate that's left and he has to find a way to rationalize his hate. And then Peter's like, oh my God, I didn't need my spider powers to crush this man. I just needed words. And like he felt bad about that and guilty and he had the remorse. And then he's like takes his own mask off to like make amends for it. I thought it was a really deep comic book.
Yeah, that's something I noticed too. It's like he had J. Jonah Jameson devastated. He had him decimated. He could have went with the sharp tongue barbs and finished him off without a problem. I mean, he was done. But instead he turned around and showed forgiveness and compassion. That's Peter Parker.
It is. And I miss that.
And that's true Spider-Man. Peter Parker doing the right thing in the hard time. You know, no matter how good and how good could it have felt to finally just smash this guy that's been at you for years, but instead it's like, you know, this guy's at the bottom. I can't hit this guy again. You know, this has got to end. And
I have to say, you guys genuinely make me want to buy this book on Wednesday. Like seriously. And
good.
Really, I've been kind of mad at Marvel because, you know, both the work stuff and, you know, not being able to have the characters I used to have just a few years ago, you know, every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and I'm glad to hear that, Spike, because as much as the negative reviews and stuff we do and things, you know, and that's what people focus on. And I know for a fact, Doug, you know, diversity in comics. I love comics myself. You know, all of us, we talk about good Captain Cummings as well. We all talk about good ones too. And we sit there, we try to promote the good ones. And so it's good to hear that people are hearing this and saying, oh, cool, a good Spider-Man we can come to again. That makes me really happy to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different audiences at YouTube. Like, I can get that there's these kids that want to hate on Marvel and stuff, but you know, I became acquainted with the YouTube scene because I miss good Marvel. I mean, I would watch reviews of great Marvel books all the time if it was possible for me to have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, and that's part of the misconception I think of a lot of us too. We're viewed as, oh, we hate Marvel, we want it to go down, and it's the exact opposite. I think it's because we grew up with Marvel, we love it, we want it to be good again. We want it. I told on another video once, I said, I want Marvel to be so good again. When I go to the comic shop, I don't have enough dollars in my disposable income to be able to pick up all the books I want.
That's me in DC right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only that. It's, for example, I'm friends with the cashier at my comic book store. Support your local comic book store. And the thing is, she always sees me with like Gambit T-shirts and stuff, but I never buy Marvel. And she's like, she doesn't get it. And I have to explain, like, you know, even if I work for the company and even if I, you know, love the characters, I cannot endorse what they are doing right now as a writer and as a fan and as everything, because DC or Image or Udon or, you know, some indies deserve my money more, and they are putting more their hearts in what they're doing than Marvel currently. As much as it hurts me, I mean, I believe in, you know, comics being a legitimate literature medium, and I have to support the people who are actually putting the work in it.
Yeah, that's why I can't support them at times, because I'm an artist and I see they're all works of art to me. It's a different form of art, and I have seen people, and I've researched history, like art history, and you know when people just tarnish and tear apart another painting and just paint over it to destroy a piece of history, and that's what I see a lot of this stuff going in. And I'm like, these are somebody else has seen this and you're destroying somebody else's work while you do this, and I can't stand it when somebody tarnishes another person's.
I wanted to also focus on another page in this book. It was just after Peter Parker got done laughing because J. Jonah Jameson said he didn't have any responsibility. And then J. Jonah Jameson responds to his laughter saying, laughing, always laughing, responsibility, mind control, clones, it's all a joke to you. And he's throwing his anger. And then Peter says, whoa, Jonah, I joke to put people at ease. I counter the mask I need to wear. I can juggle cars. That's terrifying for others and for me. This life's scary and sad, and I have to joke because what's the alternative? And I think that says a lot right there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, he's always done it to calm himself down and to anger that was people have stated this before, and we don't see it that often anymore. But yeah, he jokes because he wants to calm down his own nerves and to make other people calm down, meanwhile angering the villains.
Not only that, I think if that was a direct quote, I mean, you can tell in the cadence of the sentences that there's honesty in those statements.
Right. Yeah, I read that word for word.
Pretty rare right now, especially in Marvel comics. Like they only seem to be like prefabricated lines, to pander to someone.
Now, yeah. What about you, Doug? You grew up with Spider-Man as well, so how did that page hit you?
Like I said, the entire issue is really impressive. And, you were talking about, people saying that we kind of hate everything earlier and where we just poo-poo Marvel all the time. And it's like, no, when a book's a good book, I'm going to say it's a good book. I was impressed with every single page in this book. And I was especially impressed given what I saw in the first couple issues. I almost think that, like, Chip Zdarsky didn't do his homework or wasn't finished with his, like, Peter Parker homework before he like got the job or something, because at first he was only telling jokes like it was just a joke factory, like every other panel. It was like he was like, okay, I have a joke quota. I got to get in, before the end of 20 pages, I got to get in, 25 jokes or something like that. And like in this issue, it's like, no, you've just explained that you understand the underlying reason. So now going forward, there's no excuse if you start going back to joke factory.
It's almost as if Axel Alonso's departure has restored something.
Well, and the jokes too, like we were saying, is Nerd Wonder, I think you hit the nail on the head too. It's not just for the people around him, it's for himself too. Because if you read the earlier issues of Spider-Man, Peter Parker was a bit of a hothead. He really was. When he got that powers, I think he realized, hey, I can do something now.
Yeah.
And we've seen that all throughout the 80s. I mean, the issue when he was pounding on Firelord, for crying out loud. When have we seen a Spider-Man power be that powerful? We haven't in ages.
No, it's usually just a loser who fails constantly. And that's not my Spider-Man.
Right. Now, Chip Zdarsky did do a throwback to the Slot, the clone conspiracy, because he mentioned about his wife, Marla, that when she died, he couldn't save her, and then he said Alistair Smythe, the man who killed her, did it because of me, and I live with that every day. So he's blaming himself, just like Peter blames himself for Uncle Ben. And then he thinks, but she came back, a miracle, clone, and I lost her all over again. So he experienced that twice, even though granted it was a clone.
Yeah, but it's still painful.
Yeah,
and that's the thing is, like, this issue had more like true, human emotions and like allowing the audience to connect with these characters than like all of the like what was it called, the zombie, I don't even know, Clone Saga Revisited. I can't even think of what
conspiracy.
It is. Clone Conspiracy. There you go.
Weird.
That's how little I think
monsters.
of that. It's like, so you had like all of those issues of Clone Conspiracy, and there was like, you never scratched the surface in terms of like the emotional resonance of the characters at all. It's like Dan Slott only cares about whiz bang pow, and just like superfluous stuff like that. It's just kind of like, or I should say not superfluous, superficial stuff. And it's I don't know. It's so depressing
You brought
for
up
a Spider-Man fan.
You brought up a great point, because when he had his body taken over by Dan Slott, when that ended, was there any exploration of what Peter Parker went through and the coming back and everything? No.
No, and I hated it because seriously, number one, I can scream all day about Superior being terrible, but it's a traumatic experience he went through. So traumatic that he's dealt with this stuff before. He's dealt with somebody that almost killed him. As I say a lot of times, that Superior takes a lot from Kraven's Last Hunt and tries to be Kraven's Last Hunt. And Kraven's Last Hunt traumatized Peter. He had nightmares. And I think he still has a irreversible fear of being buried alive. Like,
writing Spider-Man, it's like a very delicate balance, as I mentioned before. Like, for example, the death of Gwen Stacy. Can you mention some death before the death of Gwen Stacy that was so massively repercussive in comics that it wasn't an origin story?
Death of Gwen... There was... I mean, it was based on one comic. They got the idea from one single comic out there that it happened in a military comic that Jerry Conway read at the time, from what I know. And it was one of the girlfriends died. That's about it.
Since we have two writers here right now, let me ask you guys, do you think Peter Parker is one of the hardest characters to write in the Marvel Universe? Possibly?
I think it depends on what the intention is with the book, because I don't think that there is no room for light-hearted Spider-Man stories. The thing is, years in a row of, like Doug said, of superficial stories, it takes a toll, especially when the character was originally meant to be very melodramatic. Like the best stories I can think of from the ones that I come, except for the classics, Kraven's Last Hunt or Death of Gwen Stacy, are a couple of Marvel Knights miniseries called, the first one, With Great Power and Reign, and they have their differences in their premise, but what they both do very well, and that's what I liked about the Marvel Knights line, is that they go to the core of the heart of the character.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen an interaction in a Spider-Man book this good since Peter Parker talking to Aunt May from JMS's run.
Oh yeah, that one.
This threw me back to that. I had the same, wow, this is actually some deep writing. This is knowledge of the character. Because, I mean, a lot of people before that was writing Aunt May as just, I'm dead, I'm sick all the time, and that was about it. And this really explored the character of her, and how she took him being Peter Parker and how she went on a little personal crusade to help his image and things like that.
I thought that was...
That JMS run was the last time I was really excited about, picking up a Spider-Man book on a monthly basis. I had kind of fallen away from Spider-Man for a long time, and then he came in and I was picking it up. And even when I disagreed with some of the weird stuff that was going on with the book, he always seemed to have a fundamental understanding about who Peter Parker was and show a willingness to, I mean, when a writer writes scenes like that with like the Aunt May scene, Peter scene, you're getting a window into their own psyche and their own soul. And, they're making themselves vulnerable in some sort of way because they're also speaking through the characters. And so when you don't see that, that's a sign that the writer is either A, not able to harness or tap into those kind of like truthful emotions, or B, just not willing to do it.
And this is something, you touch a very important thing, Doug. And I think we need to see more of this in superhero comics and not forget that this is part of it. It's not just about, the slugfest. These characters are people in a sense that you can relate to them. I mean, I've never flown and fought someone in the sky, but I've had problems with people I love. And that's what we're gonna relate to. That's why no one relates to America, because, punching things that look like stars is no one's experience. Like, you can be as Latin as you want. I mean, a Mexican never punched something, and made it look like star.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nerd Wonder.
Oh, I'm just trying to think of other characters. Like, there's so many, and even in the past, like, diverse characters used to be fun because they used to be like all sorts of stuff. Like today I was thinking about Static Shock, which I'm still like, as I said before, I'm new to the comic book.
But this is the thing, Nerd Wonder. They used to be only characters, not diverse characters.
That is true. And that's what I loved about him, because I am still trying to hunt down Static because I'm new to the game, but I like to indulge and read the lore and the history about stuff. So, but as I know, Static was growing up in a very poor city. He was kind of like a Peter Parker, who it wasn't always about like racial tensions and stuff, which it sometimes could, but except it was always about just a kid that kind of grew up in a bad situation, like a bad part of town, and just trying to make the best of things.
Another thing too in the book there is, we were talking about a little bit already. Oops, I'm sorry, Spike. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you guys something. You know, considering Dan Slott is probably watching this. Mm-hmm. Hey Dan, yes. What would you be like? Your suggestion, like the real, you know, not in a catty way. Just, you know, how would you suggest that the book could get in the right track again? I mean, in his run, not in Chip Zdarsky's Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay. Which one do you guys want to take that one first?
I'll go.
All right.
So I've always said that Dan Slott works best when, you know, in my, I think it was in my live stream, I said he's kind of like a juggler, where he'll often, like, a juggler has a certain amount of whatever objects, you know, that he could juggle safely and appropriately. Some people could juggle 10 items, some people could juggle 15, some people could only juggle 6. So with Dan, the problem with him seems to be he has these kind of grand ideas that are very intricate and complex, and they take many months, and like it's almost like he juggles like 20 items when he would do much better if he would juggle 10 instead, and not, you know, bite off more than he could chew.
You know, I think you have a good point, because he's wrote some really good shorter run stories. Mm-hmm. You know, I think he's always stuck those better. And when he does these big outlandish ones, I think he's got great big scope ideas, but he tends to fail the landing, the conclusion of it. You know, it just gets too, like you said, involved in, and it's resorting to a Deus Ex Machina or something like that, where if he went with something just a couple issues long, he could write something really good. I mean, like the Human Torch Spider-Man book, that was really good. So
and that's a good example where when he's kept on a shorter leash and it's more self-contained, and he just has this idea of, it's like, okay, I could. He's better at the 50-yard dash than the half marathon, that sort of thing. And it's like, stick to what you're good at. And, you know, then you could train for the different races. But right now, you're a 50-yard dash guy, Dan.
And how about you, Nerd Wonder? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm actually going to agree with that, because I have read his Johnny Storm and Spider-Man run. And from women I know that don't read it anymore, they say there's one thing I do know about, like the two things that people defend Dan Slott about is literally Human Torch and Spider-Man, and his Renew Your Vows run, the 5-issue Renew Your Vows, and the 5-issue, wasn't it a 5-issue run of Human Torch and Spider-Man?
I don't remember, to be honest.
But yes, he is great with miniseries. He wants to make big events, but he can't do it. He can't do it, and it just causes more mess and more rage and more problems than that somebody else is going to have to pick up the mess. Like, we already know that Clone Conspiracy was such a mess, they had to get somebody else to join up to help pick the pieces up. And then we had to buy Nimbuses and everything else just to understand what was going on afterwards. It was a mess, and it shouldn't have ever happened.
Mm-hmm. Right. Dan Slott's sort of like on a basketball team. He would be like a point guard who like wants to be a center. And it's like, you're not a center, man. You don't have the body. Like, you don't have those particular skills. You're a point guard. Stick to your skill set and then hone your craft within the confines of your abilities. But, you know, that takes a certain amount of humility to do that sort of thing. And if, you know, we could always go back to social media and the way he behaves. He has, there's a lot of pride in him and not a lot of humility. You know what? So I don't know if he's going to take our suggestions. And in fact, he's like the type of guy who will like listen to this, and even though we're giving him good advice, he will do the exact opposite because he's like, I gotta prove those guys wrong.
I will say
I
this
think
though.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, whenever you guys talk about him like that, all I can think of is I mean, when you talk about pride and stuff, it for some stupid reason I always think of Mary Jane's dad. Well, because it was a writer who glamorized and wanted to be a award-winning writer, but he just couldn't get up to it, and so he was just totally enamored and like just plunged himself into it, thinking that he could do it if he just had a little bit more time, but in the end lost his family and ruined his life chasing a dream that he was never able to achieve.
I think that's a little tribute to Stan Lee. Like, he always wanted to write a great American novel,
Yeah.
and he never could, by the time he started writing characters like this, the Marvel Age, he was already in his 40s.
Yeah. But you know, he did kind of write he wrote a great American novel. I mean, it may not be the ones that he envisioned.
Yeah,
I think he wrote the great American pop culture.
Yeah, he did. That's true.
And I thank him for it. Like, I mean, I think he has inspired more people than, in modern times, like, I don't know, probably Huckleberry Finn or something. Like, people from around the globe can talk about Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, I mean, this character Spider-Man's so recognizable. He's one of the very few characters you could just show a glove and everybody knows who he is.
That's true.
Yeah, totally. The genius of Steve Ditko as well, it knows no bounds. I'm a very big fan of the guy. I have like Amazing Spider-Man 33 hanging in my wall frame right now.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
really? Awesome.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And getting back into comic a little bit, Doug mentioned this earlier, and this page is another one that was just phenomenal. At this point, you've got J. Jonah Jameson. He's on his knees, weeping, and he says, "My father is dead. My daughter is dead. The Bugle, the only thing worth a damn, pardon my language, in this world has rejected me. My wife is dead." And he repeats that, "My wife is dead," and a little bit smaller there. I mean, you can just tell he is broken. That's some good dialogue there.
Wait, I didn't know he had a daughter. I didn't recall that part.
Yeah, it was really really well written here. And then, he's mad at Peter. He tells him just to go, and Peter doesn't. That's when, as Doug mentioned, Peter says, "I'm tired of this game. It's gone on too long, and your family. You think nobody cares about you, but I do. I care. You think you're alone?" And that's when he takes his mask off. And that's why we said that's a Peter Parker moment right there. That's the character under the mask. And then we go to a full page panel there with Peter having his hand on J. Jonah James' shoulder and telling him he's not with his mask off. I seen that as like, this is great. Now, Nerd Wonder, part of the reason I mentioned that is you said you have some issues with this because of your fears. Because you fear this is just going to be a surprise. None of this happens and it gets wiped out.
Yeah, well, that's what I feel like it's going to happen. They've done this constantly. We've seen this happen before, and every time Peter progresses a little bit, they reset it. It's meant to be a bait and switch. They dangle that carrot over your face, and then you will come back. They just want the money revenue, and I believe that this is Zdarsky really trying to put his best effort and love into this. But I just don't see editorial even allowing this. They're going to pull the plug like they've always done. And once again, a great story is going to be tarnished.
I think this is kind of like the Killing Joke in many aspects. Not only in the dynamic of, the antagonist and the protagonist bonding and, showing how parallel they are to each other. But, as long as these good issues published and people are able to buy it, as I'm going to do, like listening to what you guys have to say. I mean, this book is already out. Like, they cannot take that away from you. You have to also know how to let go if something is not going your way, even though these characters mean so much to us. And it's something I've learned the bad way, like letting go is with the characters when you actually have made a point of comic books being your lifestyle. It's hard, but you have to learn to do it.
You know, that's a good point, because that's hard to do, especially when you grew up on a character and you've been reading that character for 30 plus 40 years, you know, to make that separation. And in my opinion, too, no wonder we're judgmental and we have issues with these things. It's because we grew up with them. We're passionate and we know them.
But the other thing it's frustrating is that, so it's like you get an issue like this and you see all the potential that is there if they would just continue to go down this road, you know, obviously carefully and with writers that are doing their jobs appropriately or whatnot. But like, it's like you see that they could do so much with the character, but then, you know, as Nerd Wonder was saying, they just like, you know, pull the rug out from underneath you and they're like, no, we want Peter perpetually on this treadmill of like, you know, this creative treadmill that goes nowhere. And you're like, it doesn't have to be this way. It
Eternal
really
Peter
doesn't.
Pan. Eternal Peter Pan. That's what they want. They want him to remain forever young with no changes. And it kills him.
Well, if you think about it, doesn't it slap the reader in the face in a way? Because you spent all these dollars, all this time, all these years reading this character, and they just, didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah. And it's not only for them, it's also for new readers, too. Because as I said, I was new, and I dropped it as soon as I heard One More Day happened, or this and that happened, or this stuff. I was furious, because I was like, I want to start, but you guys have just taken away anything I could have been invested in.
You know, Nick W. mentioned something in the comments that I have to read it. It's a brilliant thought, though. He says, watch, J. Jonah Jameson is really the chameleon.
Oh, God, no, don't say that, because I believe in Chip. He's trying so hard. Don't do another, genetic clone? What do they call her? Genetic actress. Do not do that, please.
Okay. The fan thing said, Douglas Ernst, what would be the next step for Peter Parker or for Spider-Man?
Given this particular Zdarsky run?
He didn't say, but I take it the way you want.
Well, I mean, if you're just talking about the Zdarsky run, like I just got the feeling that, you know, obviously Jonah's not like Commissioner Gordon doesn't have law enforcement connections, or he doesn't have that role like the Batman Commissioner Gordon, but like within being a newspaper man, you know, he and Peter could have some sort of bond together where they work together. You know, Jonah being if he was the editor-in-chief of the Bugle again or something, you have all sorts of sources, including obviously FBI sources. You know, they could work together on all sorts of stuff. And, you know, as in the past, it's not necessarily, there was a conflict of interest there with Peter and his photography, but like, you know, Peter would then be helping Jonah with the paper. But this time they'd be on like they would know exactly what's going on. So he's doing his heroic thing. Jonah's getting like the cool stories out of it from Spider-Man and like, you know, inside scoops and like interviews with Spider-Man or who knows what. I don't know. I just think that there's a really cool dynamic that could be explored there if they wanted to go that way. I think it would be awesome to see like Jonah and Spider-Man actually being like, you know, working together and Jonah in this issue says that, like, you know, there talks about all the lost opportunities in his life. And like now if he could find a way to help Spider-Man and Peter Parker to like save like hundreds or thousands of tens of thousands of lives through his work with the newspaper and Spider-Man, I mean, that would be amazing. No pun intended.
Yeah. I'd like to read another comment too. It's Jay Cephas. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. He said, and I think this is a good point, have to give credit or blame to diversity in comics in certain DC titles for getting me back into comics. And now I'm spending more than $50 a month getting caught up on Rebirth titles, despite being a Marvel fan. You know,
I have 2 points here. The first one is one I've already told, I think, once to Doug. Why aren't you writing comics, man?
Yeah, why aren't you?
You should be writing comics, dude.
Hear that, Doug?
Oh, that was me. Sorry, I was reading a comment somebody sent me. What will Dan Slott do with this? You're saying why am I not writing comic books?
Yeah,
you totally should, man.
Well, actually,
I'd be a big fan.
In 2018, I will be putting together like my own kind of thing, and I'll be looking for an artist. So that's on the docket. And then obviously like a novel. I've said before that I'm working behind the scenes slowly with an artist on a novel that I'm almost completed with. But yeah, I've always said if I was nominated, I would run. If I was elected, I would serve in terms of the comic book industry. So, you know, I don't think anyone at Marvel is going to be calling me anytime soon. But yeah, if somebody at DC was like, Doug, we've watched all your, YouTube videos, we've listened to your live streams, and we saw your resume. We know you worked at the newspaper and you're in the military and blah, blah, blah. We'd like to take a chance on you, just like Marvel took a chance on Ta-Nehisi Coates, or, that sort of thing. I'd be like, let's do it. So yeah, that's, I'm out there. My resume's out there. I'm on LinkedIn. So if anybody, if anyone wants to contact me, that's fine. But otherwise, I'm just going to do my own thing, and that's starting in 2018.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and I want to buy a signed copy just for the record.
Yeah, no, I think everybody does here.
No problem, Frugs.
Thanks, man. And don't expect me to write anything; it would not be good. I'm a boring academic style writer, so not good for this. Chaos Sonic said to me, "Do I think Dan Slott should have worked on Namor instead of Spider-Man?" I don't know about Namor in particularly, but I'm sure there was other characters that he could have handled. And you know what? I'm fine with them actually being on Spider-Man, is if, like Doug said, if we kept them on a shorter leash and had them more focused.
I think with what he's doing right now, he should do Riri Williams. It's basically what they want to do with her, so it's a perfect match.
He probably could actually, I think he could actually write a good Riri. It's weird, but I think he could.
That's what I think he's been doing like lately. I mean, he wants all the good gadgets, and he wants, to have this very international, overpowered type of thing that I think really was going to be, and they kind of botched it and made her a dictator. But
yeah,
I think he could do it.
The Overlord. But he could probably fix it. I mean, he knows how to, because we keep seeing Spider-Man as a failure and stuff. Like, he keeps falling and falling, and Riri keeps winning and winning. He knows how to.
I don't think he's a bad writer.
I don't think he's a bad writer. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying that
he has accumulated a lot of biases, mostly because he has a lot of Jasmine around. I mean, and that can get to someone. I think that I've seen people go down that way. And that's why I try to be just one of the guys. Like, keep it honest.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. But I mean, in other words, he knows how to write failure. I mean, I think he writes it a bit too much with Peter Parker and stuff, but I think he could write a really good story about Riri actually losing for once and having to feel the trauma and the emotions and the problems, and maybe finally showing her having some real emotion and problems in her life. That would be amazing to see.
Awesome. Nerdy Texan actually asked me this, but I'm going to throw this question to the Nerd Wonder, since I'm sort of hosting this. If Marvel takes Dan Slott off of Spider-Man, who do you think will replace him?
Oh, that's a good question. We all suspected Nick Spencer would take over, but after the incident of Secret Empire, I would heavily vote Chip would be probably all right to do it, but he seems to be, from what I know about his other writing, he likes doing small stories. He likes doing mini stuff or something that doesn't need to go into a big epic story. I mean, I have a list of people that I would love to see return and write the book. But right now, the only person that I can't just see anybody at current Marvel writing for it.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I threw you that question. I thought you'd go back to the well and pick up an older one from the past.
Oh, I could also just say Doug could write for him, but because he's really good at it. Or heck, I could write for Spider-Man. You guys are all into your diversity hires.
Because hasn't there been a petition? Hint, hint.
We're not talking about that, but I am not here to go and talk about my high horrors. I am here to talk about DeFalco being awesome.
Yeah, that's what I'd also consider throwing on Tom DeFalco again. I think I'd love to see that, even if it was just for a year.
I'd also like to bring back JMS, and finally he was restricted as we talked about before. He was pretty much caged, and he wasn't allowed to do anything he wanted. Like, apparently the other storyline was editorial mandate. And if we could finally get him down and say, no editorial mandate, you write what you want, free of charge, let him go at it, I think we could have a really nice story.
You want to know how good JMS is without supervision?
Is it
Read
bad?
his limited series, The 12. It's actually Marvel's Watchmen. Nobody has read that, but thank me later. Read that one and thank me later.
I'm writing it
Okay.
down right now, the 12.
Yeah, remind me, because I'm drawing right now.
All right. And how about you, Doug? Who would you pick if you could pick anybody right now that's still alive, the right Spider-Man? Who would you pick?
Anybody who's alive,
Yeah, I guess so. As long as there's some
or current crop of Marvel employees.
You know, let's go with anybody alive because technically they could still bring somebody back in, right?
Yeah, that's really a tough call. I don't know. I feel bad saying it, but like I'm still biased in terms of Charles Soule. I just really like his work right now. So I'd like to see what I loved when he did that Daredevil Spider-Man team up. When I read that, I was like, this is the guy that I want writing Spider-Man. So I don't know. I'd like to see what Charles Soule did on Amazing Spider-Man. I think it would be cool.
Excellent. All right, guys, it's about 9 o'clock, and I wanted to make sure we wrapped up at 9 o'clock because if I'm not mistaken, Ethan Van Sciver is going to be doing a live stream interview with somebody at 9 o'clock. So that's what we planned for, to wrap it up at 9. So does anybody want to plug anything or say anything, plug your channels and things before we call it?
I just want to thank you for having me on, Captain Frugal, and I appreciated talking with everybody. I don't usually do the live stream with groups, so I appreciate being able to come in and speak with you guys.
No, it's a pleasure, man. I think this was a great panel. A very focused one from the ones I've seen. Like it's not a thing against them, but this was right on the spot on one topic, and we did it, guys.
Yeah, I'm really notoriously bad at that, so I apologize. But and I'm really happy to actually talk to both of you. I've always wanted to talk to you guys on streams and stuff, but you know, I'm a big blabbermouth.
Hey, you're learning. We're all learning. This is all of us together. I just want to say I thank you all for joining me too. I'm very humble that you guys would take the time just to sit down and chat with me and you guys in the comments section, taking time to the chat and ask questions and take the time to listen. It really means a lot to me. I mean, I'm just some old dude sitting in a chair talking and happy to have other people share the same passion. So if you don't already, make sure you check out the Nerd Wonders YouTube channel. She's also on Twitter. She draws pictures and talks about comic books, and she's awesome like that. Check out Spike Valentine's channel too. He's got some great insight. I mean, this guy really knows and has a lot of insight in the comic book world. He's a guy that more people should be picking his brain. He's awesome. And of course, Doug, you guys know, probably everybody here knows Doug. He's always insightful and his channels always makes you think, and I greatly appreciate it. And he's a classy guy on Twitter. And I'm just very thankful to be in this group and be a part of it. So thank you for taking this time, for listening and watching with us. And until next time, you guys, keep it frugal.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Enjoy. Channel. Yeah, that's right. Frugs needs more love.
Well, so thank you, guys. All right, everyone. Have a good night.